We're tacking to the middle. We're tacking to being pragmatists. We're tacking to saying, yes, we want to develop our natural resources. It's not if, but how.
Welcome to WONK. If there's one sector that stands at the epicenter of Canada's fight to pivot our economy, it is surely our resources sector, in part as the low-hanging fruit of economic growth, and in part as the core components of clean technology in future. If that sounds like a contradiction, it's one that this federal government is embracing. And one thing is clear, the time of slow-rolling big energy projects is over. Tim Hodgson is Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. Thanks for being with us.
Good to be here.
So there is a big kind of ambitious agenda, and I think you might agree that your appointment was seen as, we're all business. You're a banker, you know how to raise capital, how to put deals together. Does it feel as though that kind of sense of urgency and momentum is still with us?
Absolutely. The other thing that you didn't mention is I spent the last many years sitting in boardrooms where capital gets allocated. There's a tremendous opportunity to allocate capital to Canada. I think major players in the energy and natural resources space are looking for signals that now is the time to reinvest. They are getting those signals. And I think the response has been very positive. I think this is a really exciting time to be looking at Canada.
Some of the reasons I think that we've seen a kind of a slowdown in projects have been this perception of regulations, a long time, right, between kind of conception to shovel in the ground. And some of the reasons for that are still in place. I mean, people will point to Bill C-69 or 48, whatever they are. You're not scrapping all of them. So what's the kind of mechanism by which the Major Projects Office and your ministry can actually speed things up?
I've heard lots of the let's rip it all up analysis. Sure. And what I say to the CEOs I chat with, I said, look, let's talk about any OECD country in the world. Can you imagine an OECD country that's going to rip up its environmental rules and not replace them with something else? I'm pretty sure they're going to have to write new legislation if we do that. How long is it going to take to get that legislation passed? And then how long will we take debating in the Supreme Court every different clause as the different stakeholders argue over the new legislation? And then how long will we take consulting with First Nations over what that new legislation means for them? And that entire time we will not be building. That is not the objective. The objective is to build. So the strategy that we chose to take was to use Bill C-5, the Building Canada Act. It allows us to focus all of the energies of the government on the 13 different ministries that are involved in these to deliver one point of contact for a proponent to make sure all 13 of those things are getting done in parallel, not sequentially. They're getting done talking to one another for the best outcome. And the mentality when we do that is not if, but how. How do we deliver that? And how do we do that in a 2-year time frame? And the 2 years is really important. Mm-hmm. As somebody who sat in a boardroom and allocated capital, and I'm being told your listeners are fairly sophisticated. So, hey, if you're running an IRR on a project, or you're running an NPV on a project, or you're running a payback period, and you can't understand how long it takes until you can start running your discount rates, it's really hard to commit to investing in that project. Giving people certainty that if you start spending money on this, in 2 years, you will have clarity on your plan to build and operate. That's what allocators of capital in a boardroom need. That's what we're committed to doing. That's what the Major Projects Office will deliver. And while we're doing that, we're learning. We're learning how to take all those things that today are done sequentially and do them effectively in parallel. We're learning how to get environmental reviews that were taking 5 and 10 years done in 2 years, re-engineering how we do it. We're learning how to get consultations done in a more streamlined and effective way while meeting our obligations to First Nations. As we're doing that, we will be learning, and then we will retool all of our legislation. But at the same time, I want to make sure people understand we're also doing things that affect other projects. So one project, one review, where today we have both provincial and federal regulation. We've gone to the provinces and said, hey, if you've got a process in place that is equivalent to ours, we will let you take the lead. We will step back. We will rely on your approvals. That takes out a whole layer for every project going forward that is done. And a perfect example of that is last week, Silicim, which is a huge project on the West Coast in British Columbia, led by First Nations. It'll be the second largest private sector investment in the history of this country, was approved by the British Columbia government. That evening, we gave our approvals and they're off to the races. That's a perfect example.
I want to dwell on that for a second, because when you say bringing together, I think you said 14 departments, we hear this phrase, all of government approach. You, as an outsider, of course, you'll bring fresh eyes to some of how this stuff works. And the saying it and the doing it, of course, are very different. And it's super complicated to bring different departments together in a regular way, in a way that is much more business-like, if I can put it that way, faster, streamlined, failing fast, moving on, that isn't bureaucratic, that isn't let's set a meeting next month to talk about that, but let's actually get it done. So I hear that the intention is there. That seems clear. I mean, I don't think anybody could challenge that, or the will to do it. How's it going, I guess, is what I want to say. Are you running into kind of the forces of stasis and bureaucracy and status quo?
Whenever someone retools an organization, there are challenges and there are opportunities. What I've been so impressed by, Don Farrell, we brought Don in, fantastic leader, someone who's built renewables, built pipelines, built transmission lines, very experienced in the metals and mining space, someone who knows how to get these sorts of things done, took on the TMX project when it was struggling and got it done for the benefit of all of Canada. She has hit the ground running in an amazing way. We are having regular it is business-like. You have fixed meetings. People show up, we make decisions, we get stuff done, and she's just been a wonderful addition. And so I'm really excited about the early days of the Major Projects Office, and very optimistic that we will be able to deliver for Canadians.
It was clear from the first projects announced that there is the critical minerals, the kind of resources of the future are in your sights, right? We're talking about copper. There will be lithium. There will be all of this stuff that will natural gas. I guess we'll put kind of in the mix in that file too. The real low hanging fruit at a time where our economy needs some juice is, of course, in our kind of conventional oil industry. And so, expanding pipeline capacity would be one thing. And you've already heard lots of questions about that and what might happen there. And another piece of that might be the emissions cap. What can you kind of say about that in a way that speaks to how those are pretty important if what you want is higher GDP next year?
So what the Prime Minister has said is we're going to focus on results. We'll figure out how to get there. We have said that a key part of moving forward in the energy space, a necessary part of that, if we're going to talk about oil, we can talk about LNG in a second, is the Pathways Project. The Pathways Project is really, it's Canada leading the world. It's the first time any nation has said we are going to fundamentally change the carbon intensity of our entire industry, so the entire Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin, the entire oil sands. That is that is a nation-building project. That is a project which is demonstrating to Canadians and the world that when we produce our natural resources, we will do it in the most environmentally responsible way, and we will deliver that product to our allies who are looking for that product. We can look at what we've been able to do in LNG, and I don't know how familiar your listeners are, but the LNG projects that are being built by Canada have the lowest carbon intensity of any LNG projects in the world. That is something that our allies have taken note of. I was in Germany a couple of weeks ago, and our allies are very clear. They will say LNG is a transition fuel. We understand that. We also understand that given the geopolitics of the world and given AI and the massive increase in expected electricity usage, we are going to be using more of that transition fuel than we previously thought. And we are going to be using it for longer. And so if that is the case, we look at Canada and we say, we don't want to be beholden to Vladimir Putin. We tried that, not a good look. We're not really interested in having other governments dictate to us that we must buy their energy to get access to their markets. We're not interested in being dictated by an autocratic-like ruler. But Canada believes in multilateralism. Canada believes in free trade, and Canada believes in our values around responsible production of resources. So, can we please buy more of your product? We are really interested in buying your product because it's the cleanest footprint LNG in the world. My view is, if that's the case, Canadians would say that's something we should be doing.
I think Canadians definitely welcome this idea that we should find new markets, and for sure, if that means not sending things south at the moment, there's some real understanding of why that could be a good idea. The East-West imperative is still with us, right? We still ship resources, even when we're shipping them now to Asia, that could go across our country rather than routing through the U.S. and, in fact, bringing refined products up from the U.S. Are we still in a situation, and I know that part of Bill C-5 and there are ministers dedicated to kind of making Canada work together better, getting the provinces working together. Are we there yet when it seems so obvious that we should be shipping oil and gas from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and to the east that needs it?
So what we've said is we want to help where there is consensus in the jurisdictions and where there's support from First Nations, and we're seeing that today. The Silissum project, which I mentioned earlier, which will be the second largest private investment in the history of the country, involves a new pipeline. It will be Indigenous owned. We've seen the TMX get built. If there are proponents that want to bring new infrastructure to Tidewater, now that could be the West Coast, it could be the Arctic, it could be the East Coast. If there's a proponent that brings it, that works constructively with those jurisdictions and brings First Nations along, we're going to help that get done. And I think the Silissum project is a great example of where that's happening. It was interesting. I think yesterday, Cedar LNG, a third LNG producer, just applied for a significant expansion of their, which again will effectively use existing infrastructure more effectively to bring more of our natural gas to Tidewater. Again, I think that's good for Canada.
One of the things that's also good for Canada, clearly, is this kind of shift in attitude. We're open for business. We're not getting in the way of our resources sectors in a way that maybe there's been a perception that's been the case for years. I know you probably don't want to talk specifically about the Tech Anglo deal, but what happens when you change the tone of your industries in resources? You see it in AI as well, though, Minister. The world comes to buy your assets. And so I guess I'm curious that we want the capital. It's great that outside investors want to buy Canadian things. It's a vote of confidence. But it means, of course, a loss of a certain amount of sovereignty, the future direction, IP, all of the things that matter. And we're talking here about critical minerals when it comes to tech. Should we be a little bit more elbows up when it comes to takeovers of some key companies?
So I'm not going to comment on an M&A deal.
Didn't think you would.
That's Minister Jolie's responsibility, and there will be an appropriate review, and there will be a determination of whether the deal is in the net benefit of Canada. But look, here is what the world has woken up to. If you look at the International Energy Agency's assessment of critical minerals, and I've got the chart here in front of me because I'm getting ready for the upcoming G7 Energy Ministers Conference. Of the 20 critical minerals identified by the IEA, China today controls 50% or more of the production of 14 of those critical minerals. China is the number one producer of 19 of those 20 critical minerals. Oftentimes, they're doing that through control of processing. That's a challenge for the world. Canada can be the answer. Canada has almost every single mineral on the list that oftentimes we are the largest. We have the largest reserves. We have an opportunity to build the right way with our allies and take those cards out of China's hands and put them into our allies' hands, and that strengthens our hand. The Prime Minister identified the critical minerals buying group as a priority at the last G7 conference in Kananaskis. It'll be a focus of the G7 Energy Minister meeting at the end of October in Toronto. We are working with our like-minded allies, both in the G7 and in NATO, to try and change that dynamic and take that stranglehold grip that one country has on critical minerals. Because as you've pointed out, this is key to energy transition. This is key to our new economy. If we are going to go to that new economy, all of these minerals are critical to that success.
Does that mean you would consider welcome support processing in this country? Because we've really moved away from it for decades and decades in all resource sectors.
Absolutely. We are very focused on not just mine development, but value-added processing. In several of the conversations with the premiers who are focused on their particular province's resources, they've been very, very clear that they want us to help with the value-added processing. And strategically, that's important to our allies too. I mean, One of the ways that China has got a stranglehold on these things is not so much they don't have all of these the reserves in their country, but they control the processing.
One of the things that will drive interest, capital allocation in all of those new minerals, the critical minerals, does kind of represent a great opportunity for Canada for decades and decades, is of course shared commitment and agreement globally to the rules around how we're going to price carbon. In other words, the only way to kind of incentivize us to move to even battery technology is to agree that we need to. We seem to be going the other way, and I'm saying this on a day. This was the UN General Assembly, and the president got up at that General Assembly and spoke for almost an hour, and a big chunk of that talk was about the climate change hoax. And whatever we think about that, that's the tone in the world now, Minister. We're much more focused on oil, on natural gas as kind of, we'll call it a bridge, and less so incentivizing the shift to that new technology. So how do we make it happen?
I think that's the tone of some people. I don't think that's the tone of many of our like-minded allies. I think the world, for both responsible behavior, but also because it's good economics, is moving towards a lower carbon intensity world. We're seeing that in EV production. We're seeing that in the use of renewables in the energy mix. It is happening. It will be a transition, and our job as a government is to make sure Canada profits and is well positioned to lead through that transition where we are responsible. We want to be a clean and conventional energy superpower. So we need to do the right things around our conventional energy. And we believe that is demonstrating to the world that we will produce the lowest carbon intensity natural resources, conventional natural resources that we possibly can. And that we make the right steps as the world transitions so that we're leading there as well. So that's one of the reasons why the small modular reactors are on our list. We believe that nuclear will be a big part going forward by being the first country in the G7 to build small modular reactors. And we're building 4 of them. We started with the first one at Darlington. There are 3 more behind that, and several other provinces. That means the supply chain, the global supply chain around building that technology, a lot of that's going to be in Canada. That has huge knock-on benefits going forward. You know, it's really interesting. There's a company in Cambridge which is making some of the big components of the first SMR. Well, once that technology is set up, we have a cost advantage over anybody else in the world when other people start building those components. That's an opportunity to create long-term factory jobs, engineering jobs, high-paying AI jobs as you re-engineer for new reactors in new countries. So my point in this is, as we go through this transition, we want to make sure we lead on the conventional side, but we also lead on the clean and renewable side, because that is where the world is going over time. And you know, people can say it's a hoax. That's their right. The reality is the energy mix, even in places like the United States, is moving continuously towards a cleaner mix, a lower carbon mix, and it's up to us to choose how we want to take part in that and profit from that.
All of this, these big ideas, big efforts, a pretty ambitious agenda for this government is happening in the context of a minority government. And I'm curious, just as a minister, are you too busy to think about that? Or is there a part of you that considers, what can I do and put in place that will hold regardless of what happens, you know, post-confidence vote on the budget or whatever? Or do you just do what you can do as long as you can do it?
Well, it's interesting you say that, Amanda. I'm new to politics, as you know, but one of the things that has really surprised me is the level of unity around where we are going. I would say we're tacking to the middle. We're tacking to being pragmatists. We're tacking to saying, yes, we want to develop our natural resources. It's not if, but how. And how is being environmentally responsible, doing it in conjunction with First Nations so that we maintain the social license to continue to do this, both within Canada and as an example to the world. I have been pleasantly surprised by how much unity there is around this pragmatic, middle of the road. Let's agree we'll develop them, but we need to do it environmentally responsibly. We need to do it with the support of Indigenous peoples. When we build that sort of consensus, I hope that lasts.
And we haven't talked a lot about the role that Indigenous peoples will play. A couple of the projects you've mentioned in the LNG space are obviously primarily heavily backed by Indigenous folks. Elsewhere, though, you will run into opposition. You'll run into need for consultation. You'll run into things that create friction in these projects. Is there a way to pre-manage that? Is there a way to kind of set the stage or the tone in the context of Bill C-69, duty to consult, that actually does keep you moving the way you want to move.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why the Indigenous Advisory Group was part of the Major Projects Office. It's not an afterthought. It was built right into the bill. You know, your comment around we run into opposition. What I would say is some of your colleagues in the media aren't always interested in getting representative samples of where Indigenous peoples are on development. What I see from all of my conversations is there is a large group of Indigenous rights holders and leaders who are very interested in participating in the economic development of this country when it benefits their communities. And when we start with that premise that this will be done in partnership with you in a way that benefits Indigenous communities, I will tell you, Amanda, the majority of Indigenous leaders that I talk with say, we're in. We that works for us. There are some Indigenous leaders who may be philosophically opposed. The reality is there are more projects than there is capital, and so if someone doesn't want us to build in their community, that's fine. There's I am being deluged by Indigenous leaders who have projects that they believe will advance their communities, and they're quite keen to work in partnership with their provincial or territorial governments and the federal government. And my experience from my days at Hydro One is when we start with that premise, Indigenous participation and partnership speeds projects up. It doesn't slow them down. And so we have a real opportunity here to get stuff built and do right by everyone. And that's the Canadian way.
I do want to ask you, you've got a big agenda. Do you have a vision in your head of what success looks like? Is there a kind of an end state where you'll say that, yes, that's what I intended. That's what we meant to do?
One of the things about this prime minister is he does come from a business background. Whenever we set goals as a government, one of his first questions is, what are the KPIs? What are the key performance indicators? He set right up front a key performance indicator is we will attract $500 billion of private sector capital into the Canadian economy. His view, which I think is a smart view, was if we can do that, we will give ourselves more than any other country can take away from us. We will control our own destiny. We will put Canadians to work in good paying jobs. We will retool our economy in a way where we can sell our natural resources, our energy and natural resources to all of our like-minded allies, not just our allies who we share a border with. So my perspective is $500 billion of private sector capital attracted to the Canadian economy is the first test. The first group of projects attracts $60 billion. So we're on the way. We have more work to do, as the Prime Minister has said. We'll have another tranche we announced for Grey Cup Day. And I know you're from Winnipeg, so I'm going to be there cheering the Bombers on. There'll be another tranche by the Stanley Cup playoffs, and there'll be another tranche by the World Cup. And I think the idea and the why I went through that is the second testament is that when we have a strong, visible record of, I'll stay with the football analogy, of punching a series of projects into the end zone and scoring a touchdown. And to me, a touchdown is not just a shovel in the ground, but an operating project that's generating revenue for the proponent, for the people in the community, for the provincial and federal treasuries. When we start to have those series of projects punching the ball into the end zone, it demonstrates to the world Canada is a great place to, and the positive cycle keeps going. So those are the two metrics for me.
Important metrics for sure. Will you measure success in part by jobs created, which is something that politicians do like to do from time to time?
Yes, absolutely. And we in each of the projects we look at what are the construction jobs, and then what are the long-term jobs. We also look at what's the benefit to the economy in terms of Canadian products purchased, impact in terms of royalty and tax revenues for a province, territory, federal government. So all those things are things we look closely at.
Okay, finally, I want to ask you, there's a lot on your plate. It's a big agenda. Obviously, a lot of this has been driven by events courtesy of the United States and our changing trading relationship. What's your time horizon? Because in some ways, what you're describing, of course, when you talk about retooling, literally how you function internally, that's important and that's big, but that is changing the jet engines on a plane midair. How long do you need? How long does your government need to get to, whether it's that $500 billion or just a new era of big projects happening in this country in a timely way?
I don't think this has an end point. I think it's a new way of thinking about things. It's kind of going back to basics on how we get things done as a country. Again, it's sort of adopting the mindset of, do we want to responsibly grow? It's not if, but it's how. And that is the retooling that we are going through right now. I think the hope is that becomes a methodology going forward. My hope is in perpetuity. But let's see where we get to. I feel very good about our early steps. We've been in office now for less than 6 months. I think we've accomplished a fair bit. We have a lot more to do. Canadians expect a lot from us. I'll end. That yes, it is true that the U.S. has caused this. They've decided to change the way the global trading system operates. But in many ways, this is a very good thing for Canada. When we are completely reliant on one trading partner, it's great as long as that trading partner wants to play by the rules that we think are fair and just. When we see that they no longer share those views, it's time for us to diversify our economy. That's in our interests. So we can thank them for poking us and prodding us to give ourselves more than anyone can take away from us.
We'll leave it there, Minister. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
We've been speaking with Tim Hodgson, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. Before you go, here are 3 things we think are worth watching this week. The world got an upgrade from the OECD with a revision to its growth outlook. Global economies should now see 3.2% growth this year. That was just 2.9% back in June. The OECD said that as the real effect of tariffs could be delayed somewhat, this is subject to change. It noted that the effective rate of U.S. tariffs is now 19%. That's the highest since the 1930s. TikTok got a slap on the wrist from Canada's privacy watchdog. It found it didn't keep users younger than 13 off of the platform as it should. It gathered information about them and used its algorithm to target the kids with ads and content. The company said it is adjusting its controls to stop this from happening, though it did not agree with the findings completely. And we can't help ourselves. NVIDIA's giant investment in one of its biggest customers, OpenAI, would in other simpler times raise both questions and eyebrows. The transaction is pretty simple. OpenAI needs billions to build data centers powered by NVIDIA's chips. So NVIDIA's giving them the money to do it. No problem? Well, NVIDIA's competitors might think so. The trouble is, NVIDIA just took a stake in one of its biggest competitors, Intel. When it comes to antitrust in America, we are not in Kansas anymore. That is WONK for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.